And welcome back to another week of Behind the Lens. I am film critic Debbie Elias, and you can find me every week around the globe, print and online, but every Monday you can find me right here on adrenalineradio.com and adviceradio.com at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're a little late starting today. We're running into sound issues here, trying to get those ironed out so we have no glitches during the show. So bear with us. Brian isn't here today, people. We have Steve here today. So I don't know if that's causing the problem, but you're forewarned now. An exciting show today. A show that I'm very thrilled. I can't wait to talk to the filmmakers who we have calling in with us today. We're going to have a documentarian, IDO HAAR, who is the director, cinematographer, editor of Presenting Princess Shaw, which is already, it hasn't even released yet and is breaking out to critical acclaim. And it's fascinating. It is a global tour, essentially melding media, music, song, and different cultures. It's astounding. And I hate to have favorites, but my 11:30 interview today, I think it's easy to say that he's a favorite. SOREN Peter Sorensen, director, cinematographer, and editor again. A very poignant documentary called My Father's Vietnam. And his father served in Nam. And as so many of us know, over the decades, there has been, Vietnam War fractured our country. It fractured many of the returning soldiers. It fractured the public's opinion of the soldiers returning. So this is a very interesting look, a very personal and poignant look that Soren has in speaking with his father and focusing on three soldiers that his father knew, either at Fort Dix, which I just had a revelation. Steve did something on the board I can now hear. Pardon that, but this is the joy of live. What can I tell you? But as I was saying, it's be it at Fort Dix, be it actually in Nam, be it on the airplane or in OFC school, Soren's father, Peter, knew these gentlemen, and years later, he had never talked about the war, but there was one of his friends that he thought about. And we're going to go on this great journey with Soren as he talks to his dad and to surviving members of those that did not come back from Vietnam. And considering next Monday is Memorial Day, I can't think of a better way to kick off this week, especially after this weekend. Saturday was the National Day of Saluting Military, so I'm looking forward to having SOREN Peter Sorensen with us, as well as having IDO HAAR with us at 11:15 or so. But a lot of big things are happening next week. June 1st, LA Film Festival starts. June 2nd, Dances with Film starts. And also June 1st, I'm going to give a big shout out to the South Bay Film Festival that is being sponsored in part by the Beach Reporter. And I'm putting this out there for my journalist and friend, Michael Hickson. Down the Manhattan Beach area in the South Bay region. It's the first film festival they're having. So, and that starts on the 1st also. So we got a lot of local film festivals coming up. So a lot of things that everybody out there can see in the Los Angeles area over the next 10 days or so, right after the Memorial Day holiday. But before we get to Memorial Day, opening this Friday in theaters is the much anticipated sequel to Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass. And I have to tell you, it is exquisite. It is a timeless classic. It's magical. You fall in love with the beauty of it. Colleen Atwood is back doing the costuming on it. She won an Oscar for the first Alice in Wonderland. I fully expect Oscar nomination, if not a win, for her work in Through the Looking Glass. James Bobin, who you all know from The Muppets Most Wanted. James is now helming for his first CGI and animated film, Through the Looking Glass. And yesterday at a small press conference here in LA, because there have been so many of them around the world already, I had a chance to talk with James Bobin and returning producer Suzanne Todd about Alice Through the Looking Glass and melding the Carolian world, that of Lewis Carroll, with the Burtonian world, that of Tim Burton, whose visuals brought the film to life a few years ago, with his own sensibilities, but while expanding. Because as you see, when you see the film, this is not lifted straight out of either at the Alice in Wonderland book or the Through the Looking Glass book. It grasps onto the idea of time, and time as a character, which is introduced in the original Alice in Wonderland by the Mad Hatter with one sentence. And it's that one sentence that screenwriter Linda Wolverton and James Bobin jumped on to create this new fantastical masterpiece. So, what do James and Suzanne have to say about melding these worlds and James putting his own stamp on Alice Through the Looking Glass?
Guys, I want to first say congratulations. Another, Suzanne, exquisite, a timeless classic.
Thank you.
But what I want to ask of James and Suzanne is blending the Carolian world, the Burtonian world, now the Bobinian world.
That's a good word.
and your first experience with CGI and animation on top of all of this. How do you pay homage to what comes before, retain that essence, but put your spin on it?
That's it's a question that, it's a question of tone, and tone is a result of a million decisions you make over the period of the production of the movie, and so it's something I was incredibly aware of. Because obviously Tim's first movie looked so beautiful, and it felt to me like a good sort of parameters of which I could work. But this film is obviously set in a different time period, geographical location, so I was allowed, the director, to bring something of myself to it as well. But of course, we really are standing on the shoulders of Lewis Carroll, who, again, it's that thing whereby it's your own interpretation, but I'm pretty familiar with his work, and I really felt that whilst we couldn't tell the story of the book, because it was in its own way somewhat, the story hasn't much cause and effect, and the scenes blend into one another. It's quite unusual. But I wanted to pay tribute to him in the sense that it'd be a story that he would appreciate. And I think even though time travel was kind of, as a literary conceit, is later than him, I think as a mathematician, he would appreciate the idea of time travel, because it's equations and physics, basically. So I wanted to try and keep that part of it too, but at the same time, having time be a person was, of course, Lewis Carroll's idea. Lewis Carroll wrote in the book, when Hatter meets Alice for the first time, I've been stuck here since last March when time and I quarrelled. So it was kind of those bits. It's basically trying to incorporate elements of Lewis Carroll whilst maintaining the Tim world, but then bringing something of what you think those things are. And it's, as I said, it's a question of a day-by-day, living your life thing. But the end result I'm really pleased with, and these guys did an amazing job. So.
And when James says day by day, he literally means day by day, minute by minute, for years. For years and years. When you talk about, what you're talking about in terms of the achievement of the tone and the look, it is thousands and thousands, if not millions, of decisions. And, we were very lucky in many cases to have Danny Elfman come back to do the score, and Colleen Atwood, who won an Oscar for the first Alice, to come back and do the costumes. We had a new production designer, Dan Henna, another Academy Award winner, who we were very lucky that, we chose someone who really fit in and helped James, again, honor what Tim had done, but push it into something fresh and new that was James's own thing. Ken Ralston doing the visual effects, obviously, them coming back. They had been Oscar nominated for the first movie, and Ken has won many other Oscars. And yes, it was many, many, I'd say millions of decisions.
And by, as you say, a huge number of people. The credits for this film are like 10 minutes long. And that's because they all helped. And so this is the result for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, and when Suzanne Todd mentions, Ken Ralston, won an Oscar, Colleen Atwood won an Oscar, Disney is on a roll this year with the films that are coming out. It's going to be interesting to see how Oscars do play out because of the VFX that we're seeing this year. For example, in Jungle Book, new strides were achieved with photorealism in that film. So whether we end up seeing some science and tech awards coming the way of Disney and the companies that have helped with this proprietary development of a new software and new technology, or be it, on the art side, the televised end of the Academy Awards, it's going to be a tight year. And I think that Disney is really going to they've stepped up their game all year long. We've got a lot more to look forward to, including Finding Dory next month. It's every month we've got at least one or two gems that are popping up. And as many of you know, today, Beauty and the Beast, the very first teaser trailer just broke for the live action Beauty and the Beast that premieres next year, March 17th, 2017. So there's a lot to look forward to. So, of course, go buy Disney stock because there are great things happening. But I think before we have Ido calling in, I think we'll take a commercial break. Steve's nodding his head up and down. So that's good. We'll do a commercial break, and when we come back, we should have IDO HAAR with us. And we'll be back. Behind the Lens is sponsored in part by the Culver City Observer. Located in the heart of Screenland, Culver City Observer is available in print and online at www.culvercityobserver.com. And we are back. So, before we get to presenting Princess Shaw and IDO HAAR, there's a great documentary that is currently out right now. I had the pleasure of moderating the Q&A this weekend at Sundance Cinemas. It is called Almost Holy, and it is the subject of the film. He's known as Pastor Crocodile, Pastor Gennady, in the Ukraine. It's a fascinating story, a one-man, almost vigilante. He is a priest, he is a pastor, and he is now, in the past 2 years, he is now a military chaplain. With the advent of war at the borders of the Ukraine, with Putin's troops moving in. It's an amazing story that goes back to when he started shaking things up in the Ukraine, determined to get kids off the streets. There's a big drug problem, there's a homeless problem, an orphan problem, and he single-handedly feels that he got a calling to take care of this himself, that this is his mission. And over the course of years, in pulling kids off the streets, he has adopted 32 kids. He has all of whom he rescued from the streets. Some of them we actually hear from in a subsequent piece that Russia Today actually did. It's the first time they've ever done anything focusing on a Christian pastor. And it actually interviews some of his adopted children, talking about where they were when he saved them and where they are now. One is now attending a music conservatory. Others they're cleaned up, they're happy, they're healthy. Drug trafficking, and it's not the kind of drug trafficking you think about here in the United States with cocaine and heroin. The drug of choice in the Ukraine, as we learn in the documentary Almost Holy, is tramadol. It's an opiate. Here in the United States, it's regulated. It used to be regulated in the Ukraine until the government decided to deregulate it. So it became readily available for people to, start selling to kids on the streets. Very sad, very sad. But Gennady is doing amazing work over there. He has a foundation, the Pilgrim Republic. They're now from one rehab facility started years ago. They're now 40, rehabbing adults as well. And the documentary goes on this journey. It stops 2 years ago. Director Steve Hoover, executive producer Terrence Malick. Just absolutely outstanding, moving. And it was interesting because he was curious. And so we were asking the audience, why would you want to see a documentary about the Ukraine, about what he calls his pain? And everyone had pretty much the same answer, because they want to expand their world. They want to know what's going on in the world. It is playing in New York and LA right now, expanding in coming weeks. It will be available on iTunes and all your VOD platforms. So please be on the lookout for Almost Holy. And also, if you can find it, Father of Orphans, which is the little Russia Today put together mini-series, so to speak, because there's a 25-minute segment of Gennady with his children and a little backstory, but most of it is about something that they were cut short doing when the war started, which is they all bicycle, and they bicycle 10,000 miles through Siberia, raising money, and not only for the Pilgrim Republic Foundation, but raising adoption awareness, because it is his dream to have every child in the Ukraine and Russia adopted and have a home, a loving family. So that is going to be, that's what he hopes to resume doing once the war ends, once the troops are gone. Very powerful stuff. So if you get a chance, please take a look at Almost Holy. Look for Fathers of Orphans. You will not be disappointed. And it is expanding. So just check your directories. It's still playing in LA at the Sundance Cinemas. I'm not sure where it's playing in New York, but the film's big premiere was in New York last week. So that is one of my big documentary recommendations for this week. Another documentary that we're going to start talking about is Australia's Lost Gold. Well, when this one hit me, came across my desk, didn't take much. The word gold was in it. And anybody that looks at the videos, anybody that knows me, yes, I like my gold. And, you know, it's been rumored for 80 years now that a man named Harry Lassiter found a 7-mile vein of gold in the center of Australia, in Central Australia. He claimed to have found it in the late 1890s when he was in a reformatory, and he allegedly ran away, found this, and then years later in 1930 or so, he went back on an expedition to find his vein of gold, to make himself rich, to make his wife rich, and to leave something for a legacy for his son Bob. Well, that has been a myth around through Australia for over 80 years, and for many years, the search for Australia's lost gold was part of, it was even showcased on the show High Adventure with Lowell Thomas. For those of you old enough to remember or are keyed into vintage television broadcasts, Lowell Thomas had this adventure series where he would go around the world with extraordinary tales and extraordinary places. And he did a whole segment on Harry Lassiter and looking for this lost gold. What is very creepy that we actually get to see in this new documentary from Luke Walker is they actually found Harry Lassiter's bones and they dug them up on camera. Yes, there was somebody before Geraldo Rivera. Steve's looking at me like I'm insane. When I was watching the documentary, that was very, very striking, to say the least, that they are actually digging up this man's bones. And of course, then they did relocate them somewhere else. But the mythology that has followed the story of Harry Lassiter and his gold for 80 years, for many who are, who have passed on, they don't think about it anymore. It's just, urban legend. But then you've got somebody like Luke Walker. Luke Walker is, to say the least, obsessed with the story of Harry Lassiter and his gold. And about 8 years ago, he started researching and digging into the history and the story. Now, Luke will be in town in Los Angeles this week. He flies in this week. The film will have its Los Angeles premiere Friday night at the Arena Cinema in Hollywood on Las Palmas. I will be there moderating the Q&A, post-screening Q&A Friday and Saturday. So if you're around, come on down. You'll see a great film and one of the most engaging filmmakers that you could ever hope to talk to. But Luke and I had a chance to talk the other night. Yes, it was 11 o'clock at night here in Los Angeles when I talked to him. And it was well worth every second of staying up late and learning about his journey. Because his construct of this film is very much, we are there with him. The old TV series, You Are There, Walter Cronkite. This is very much that, because as Luke is trying to either debunk or prove some of Harry's, thoughts and his ideas and his diaries, we see the look on Luke's face. He becomes part of the process, which typically with documentaries I'm not too fond of, where the filmmaker implants themselves within the documentary itself. But in this case, it works exceedingly well because we are we're getting the same element of surprise as he is. It's kind of like you feel like you're Indiana Jones, Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, and Temperance Brennan all rolled into one. So here's just a little bit of what Luke and I talked about the other night about Australia's lost gold.
When you first heard about Harry Lasseter and the legend and what it was that just grabbed your attention and drew you in so deeply?
Well, I should probably should I give a little bit of background as to what happened to Lasseter? I perhaps should maybe explain that Lasseter was a guy who, in 1930, claimed to know where there was a seam of gold 7 miles long in the centre of Australia, and he persuades these men to go out looking for it with him. And after a while, they think this guy doesn't know where he's going. You know, they give him 3 or 4 months, and after 3 or 4 months, they just feel like he doesn't seem to know where he's going. They feel that he isn't behaving like a man who's ever been out in the desert before, and the conditions out there are grueling. You know, it gets up to 50 degrees centigrade. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's incredibly hot. Mm-hmm. You know, they're dealing with this old machinery and trying to get through this horrible, inhospitable terrain to try and find this gold with this man that they don't believe anymore. And so they say, you know what, we think we've given you long enough. We're going home. We don't think you know where you're going. And he says, I promise you I do. Stick with me. I will find it. It's just been a long time since I've been out here. And they said, we've given you long enough. And they leave him out there. And he says, look, I promise you I will find this gold, and if I don't find the gold, I'm never coming back. And he doesn't. He dies looking for it. And the following year they find his body. And near the body they find a diary. And in the diary he's written that he's found this gold again. But he'd give it all for a loaf of bread, because he's dying horribly of exposure and starvation. And so for 80 years people have been trying to find where this gold is.
So, you know, we're having so much fun today with technical issues. IDO HAAR will probably be calling at about 11:45 or 11:50. For whatever reason, they were calling my cell phone and not the studio. So hopefully that will get resolved, because we're going to have SOREN Sorensen calling back in just a few minutes. He was very prompt and on time at 11 o'clock today, even before his call-in time. But continuing on with Luke, let's hear a little bit more about his discovery in looking for Harry Lasseter and Australia's lost gold.
I have to say, as I'm watching Australia's Lost Gold, all I kept thinking is that phrase from the Disney movie Santa Claus, believing is seeing.
Yeah, I think it is. It does end up being a film about faith, actually.
And it just, the way you constructed this documentary, the journey that you took so that our eyes could get opened along with yours. I mean, it's a fabulous structure for the story that you're telling. Was that your intent from the beginning, or how did that fall into play over the course of the 4 years or so that you were on this adventure?
Well, it wasn't originally. I didn't intend to be in the film, but I realised I've been obsessed with this story for a long time, and I found out that Bob Lasseter, Lasseter's son, was going out into the desert to look for the gold again, and so I went with him, because I thought how wonderful it was that you know, this 85-year-old guy who's been trying to find his father's gold for his entire lifetime was going out to look for it again and was inviting me along with him. I couldn't resist it, so I went out thinking, well, that would be enough of a film in itself. But when I came back, I realised that it wasn't going to be able to sustain the narrative on its own, and I found that it was always more interesting when I'd accidentally sort of wandered into frame and was asking questions about where the gold was and a particular clue perhaps that Lasseter had left behind. It was always more interesting when you saw it through my eyes, and you saw me as a bit of a detective trying to get to the bottom of where this gold was and what the clues were that we were trying to solve, And so more and more, I found that was going to be the structure that pulled us through the film. In order to really understand why this story was so fascinating, you had to see my fascination, and so I became more and more involved in the film. And the structure does end up being the viewer unraveling the clues with me, I suppose, for the most part.
And we'll hear some more from Luke Walker later on in the show. But right now, I am thrilled to welcome Soren Peter Sorensen to Behind the Lens. Hello, Soren. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I am fine. This is a real treat to have you on. Your documentary, over the years, I have known so many men who went to Vietnam, came back, many that went and didn't come back. So to see this journey that you went on with your father is just, and the revelations and the sensitivity that you bring to this, it is just an absolute pleasure and a privilege to see this documentary.
Thanks very much for the kind words. I appreciate it.
What led you? This is not because at the top of the show, and I was talking about the Vietnam War fractured America on so many fronts, and the returning soldiers were never given a hero's welcome, much as what we have since seen through the various Iraq wars and Afghanistan. Definitely not what our men and women got returning from Korea or World War I or World War II. And they were kind of cast aside, never spoke about anything. So to now focus, we're seeing slowly some documentaries, some films, but for, like an Oliver Stone, a big blockbuster piece like Born on the 4th of July, we're starting to see some of these stories now being told, your father's being one of them. What led you to this documentary of my father's Vietnam? Because you're a composer. You're not a documentarian by trade.
Well, they all kind of these things sort of fire the same parts of the brain for me. My initial motivation was probably more selfish than the celebration of an under-celebrated class of people. I knew that there was something interesting that I hadn't spoken to him about, and I wanted to know more about it because I was interested in it. That doesn't mean that I'm not honored or incredibly humbled by the fact that what comes out of this film and the interviews that I conducted for it is this kind of awareness that we didn't treat collectively as a culture or as a community Vietnam veterans the way they ought to have been treated as they came home in the 60s and 70s. So again, my initial motivation was probably more kind of an act of historic preservation or an oral history. This is just something we should do, to preserve some of his stories. But yeah, it turned into something a lot larger, and there's a lot going on as far as the both the subject matter and the thematic material.
How did the documentary start to take shape for you? Once you started talking to your dad, and you're looking at a lot of these photos, you're looking at some of the film footage. How did it start? How did the theme, the construct, start to take shape for you when you realized this was much bigger than what you thought it would be?
Well, these aren't particularly, these aren't famous people or celebrities, or like you said earlier, they're not in an Oliver Stone movie. So you, as a curious person, I suppose I knew that this would be interesting, regardless of what I found. It just turned out that it would be that it was way more interesting than what I expected. Any number of things about these people, whether it was their personality traits, the things they had in common with my father, the things that they that separated them from my father, as far as whether it was ideology or upbringing or whatever it was. The things that they went through before, during, and what their family experienced after their deaths. But this all kind of, came from a visit to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. I mean, I knew that somewhere in my attic, our attic, as I was growing up, that rattling around up there somewhere were these two pencil rubbings of the names Glenn D. Rickert and Loring M. Bailey Jr. And so I always just kind of wondered, well, what was his relationship with these people, or what was it like to lose friends or buddies, in a situation like that, where you can't confide in anybody, where you don't have any emotional support, you're not able to sort of grieve for them in a way that you might if you were stateside. So, it's, again, sort of an endlessly fascinating subject.
How did you get your dad to open up? Was he reluctant at all? Before you even started delving into Loring Bailey's family or Glenn Rickards, was your dad reluctant to talk about his own experiences?
No, and in fact, I had a conversation with my sister a few years ago about this, who also appears in the film Beth. I had a conversation with her about the fact that she had asked him a story about something, and he told her about it, and at that point, I probably scratched my head and thought, oh, why didn't we talk about this? It certainly wasn't jealousy, but it was kind of, it occurred to me that this wasn't a person that was closed or emotionally unavailable to me. All I had to do was ask, and he said, yeah, happy to help. I mean, it wasn't, and even the idea of shooting it, because he was familiar and friendly with my director of photography, Dan Akiba. We've been friends since 98 or so. So this is a long enough relationship that my dad was familiar with this person and knew that we both would treat it with respect, and that we weren't trying to be exploitative or anything like that.
Well, something tells me, just listening to your dad and seeing him on camera, that he wouldn't raise a son that would be exploitative with material like this.
Well, I'm sure that's sort of more of a compliment for him. I'll let him know you said that.
And of course, if your dad is anything like my father was, had you tried to be exploitative, you're never too old to get your bottom whacked. So.
None of that stuff happened in my family, in my household. So I wasn't concerned about that. He also, he and I interacted about we've interacted about politics and civics and history for a long time, and he's tremendously well read and a joy to talk to about those subjects. So it wasn't. Again, this didn't take any arm twisting on his part, and I should mention on the part of most of the people that took part in this documentary as interview subjects. They were incredibly generous with their time and welcoming in their homes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because once your dad started talking, and once your dad started looking, wanting to find out what happened, with Loring Bailey Jr., where was his gravesite? And then the discovery of family right there within a few miles, and the memorial gravesite right there within a few miles. How did you go about broaching Mr. and Mrs. Bailey Sr. about coming and talking to them?
Well, it certainly helped that my parents were in Russia at the time. They were both my mother and my father were pretty protective over their friends, Loring and Dorothy, who have now passed away. But I think that when I mentioned it to my parents about asking them if they would sit for an interview, again, it was they knew that I would be respectful and that I would treat it, with the respect that it deserved. But it was always explicit that Loring Bailey Sr. would do the talking, and that Dorothy would either be in the room or in the next room. But this wasn't something that she was willing to or particularly enthusiastic about talking about, and certainly not on camera. It was a devastating experience that you can't really. It's not something that it's not my place to even talk about. And for somebody like Loring Bailey Sr., who again I knew pretty well by that point. I had visited him a few times, and my parents had been friends with him for certainly 6 or 7 years by then. He didn't have to do this. He didn't have to talk to me.
Right.
It's an extraordinary honor to talk to people about losing their only child during this period in our country's history. So I treated it with respect, and they knew that this wasn't going to be something that they regretted doing.
Mm-hmm. How long was the process of the interview process of going out and meeting, with the Baileys, with, some of the other people that you spoke with?
Well, so that process took about 5 years. I mean, from 2006 through 2011. I think the last shoot that we had was in 2011, which we went down to D.C. to actually shoot at the memorial in Arlington Cemetery as well. But the thing is, it's not like 5 years of intense working, where your nose is to the grindstone and you're kind of poring over research for 5 years and you lose 90 pounds or something. It was mostly like a lot of fits and starts and hiatuses and not really knowing what I had, not really knowing how to put it together. And I didn't get to a rough cut until probably 2011 or 2012, and that was when I was earning a master's degree in art with a concentration in media studies from Rhode Island College here in Providence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it took a long time, and now it being 2006, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, it would have been unfathomable for me to think about it getting a North American release. Tomorrow is to coincide with Memorial Day weekend. It's just a tremendous honor.
Were you editing as you were going at all? Or were you just, amassing, your footage and your archival materials and then approaching this at the end to come up with your theme, with your through line?
I was, but it was just, it was so amateurish and sort of, it wasn't something that really bore any fruit. It took a long time for me to, because I didn't go to film school, so like you said, I studied music in my undergrad, and I did some music for television and some, smaller film projects before this, but I didn't know how to put it together. I didn't know what a 3-act structure was. This is to say that this is my first film, it is, but it was like on the job training. It took me, I sort of put myself through the paces as far as, putting something together that an audience could understand or could enjoy, and could learn something from, hopefully, but certainly be entertained and that it was an interesting story.
Well, I think it's very interesting. As I said, earlier, have known so many men over the years, so many guys that went to Nam, that came back. I know some that went and didn't come back from the time I was, in elementary school, and then others that I met years later. And we haven't seen stories like this about this generation of soldier. And it's so heartwarming to see the care that you have put into this documentary, because you may have learned by trial by fire to make a documentary, but the care and the sensitivity that you have put into it, that would outweigh any technical mistake you ever would have made.
I appreciate that a lot, because as any filmmaker probably does, I look at it and I only see mistakes or missed opportunities now. So, but I can't. I'd be remiss without mentioning the fact that this film, though yes, it's not common, this sort of tone when approaching this war. And I even had a festival look at the film, and their comment was something that the music wasn't this kind of rock and roll wah wah guitar, and it wasn't that I hadn't captured the essence of the '60s or something, because it wasn't like everything else, and that this is a festival that will remain nameless. But there are other films that have done it. Be Good, Smile Pretty by Tracy Dros Tragos, Regret to Inform by Barbara Sonnenborn. There are films that apply this tone, where you're looking at a very big subject through a very little lens, and that's what I tried to do. And it is part of a tradition, and there are films like it, but I think a lot of them don't see the light of day, even if there are more that exist that I haven't been found. But I looked for them because I wanted to be influenced by them. Those are to be part of this conversation again is a huge honor, and to be able to be mentioned in the same conversation with with films about Vietnam is a huge honor.
So what did you learn about yourself in the journey of making My Father's Vietnam?
That I need anger management counseling, a professional organization consultant. I don't. I don't think I learned anything about myself. I aged for so much that I'm a different person than I was when I started it. So it's hard to think from this experience, what I learned about myself. I mean, I know that this is something I want to continue doing. So, I'm currently working on a second film, and it's already shot, and it's about a musician named Omar Sosa, a Cuban composer and pianist. So I just have I have a real interest in kind of putting stories together out of material that already is out there in some ways. So, so sort of organizing archival material and things like that. I certainly learned about myself that I like doing that, and that it feels euphoric for me to do that. But it's again one of those things where it's almost strange to be having these conversations with members of the press and having these interesting conversations with people who responded to the film. It feels great, and it's I'm just thrilled that the film's going to find an audience. That's pretty much it.
Well, and everybody can start looking for it tomorrow, I believe. Tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, it's already available for pre-order on iTunes, and it's going to be available tomorrow across select cable providers and other platforms. I think Amazon, Google Play, Vudu, Vimeo, and a bunch of different cable providers.
Well, Soren, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. This has been an absolute privilege and a pleasure. And I hope you will come back on the show again as you get further in the process with your next film.
I would love to. It's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Soren, thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. And that was Soren Peter Sorensen, My Father's Vietnam. And now we have the wonderful IDO HAAR. Are you there, IDO?
I am. Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
This is a big documentary day here on Behind the Lens. We're just going from documentary to documentary.
Oh, wow.
And you've got a very interesting documentary presenting Princess Shaw.
Yes.
I mean, we're not contained in a city. We're not even contained in a country. You have spanned the globe with this documentary.
Yes. It's a documentary shot in Israel and New Orleans, Atlanta. Yes.
Now, for those that don't know, how would you describe the story of presenting Princess Shaw?
It's about Samantha Montgomery that calls herself Princess Shaw. That during the day she works with elderly people in New Orleans. In the evening she goes back home and uploads songs that she writes, upload on YouTube. Not many views, but she doesn't know that in the other side of the world, in Israel, in a kibbutz, there is Kutiman, Israeli musician, doing music for her songs.
Now, how did you find out about Princess Shaw? I understand that you knew Kutiman, correct?
Yeah, I know Kutiman for many years, and when he showed me the project included Princess Shaw, I immediately fell in love with her songs. I watched her YouTube channel and was so moved by her songs and by her clips, and I really wanted to meet her, and I met her in New Orleans.
So now, how does somebody like Samantha react when she gets a phone call from an Israeli filmmaker and says, "Hey, I saw clips of you on YouTube. I want to make a documentary about you"?
So I must say she was she was willing to meet me, and we met in a small place that I stayed in New Orleans. She was suspicious in the beginning. She came with a good friend. All this story of a guy coming from the other side of the world and this YouTube thing, she was suspicious, but very fast we felt very comfortable with each other. And same evening, we went to an open mic evening in New Orleans, and things started, the film started there.
Now, how did you go about constructing this documentary? Because there's a lot of footage where you follow her around through her day-to-day. You're also incorporating her YouTube uploads that she did, and which, for anybody out there, when you see the documentary, you're going to be blown away hearing Princess Shaw, hearing Samantha sing, because she sings everything a cappella.
Right.
But it's just the whole, because you're melding Kutiman's YouTube videos plus in-person recordings. You're blending different medium and different formats here. So how did that unfold as you started putting this documentary together?
It was very challenging, I must say. Also, those shootings, Israel New Orleans. I couldn't be in New Orleans all the time. It was very challenging, and it's something that I immediately understood that Samantha's clips and upload songs, Instagram channel, it's a very important line in this film. It was a kind of struggle during the editing to combine all those lines.
How long was your process here? I know it took you a few years.
It was a little more than a year of shooting and editing while I was going to New Orleans, back to Tel Aviv, filming Kutiman also, and editing during the trips to New Orleans. And in this film, I must say that it came to itself. I edited the scenes after every trip. Suddenly, till I found out that, okay, this is the film. This is it.
How much footage do you think you had that you were going through?
Wow, I think I had with the YouTube channel and the Instagram channel, I had something around 200 hours of footage that I had to, squeeze and to make this documentary of 83 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yes, but I was really enjoying because of the songs and the music. I really enjoyed doing that.
How surprised were you? Because you are no stranger to filmmaking. You have a wonderful track record with artistic expression and film. Were you surprised by how this was coming together, by what Kutiman was doing in terms of he was shooting individual and he was finding musical pieces and then mashing everything together? It's not something that we see.
Right. I think this was something that really caught me. I think there was something so innovative in his work. I see him kind of revolutionary, doing what he does, like giving a stage and to singers and people that like Samantha, he find those amazing talents and create this music. This is something that gave me a lot of inspiration.
So what is it that inspires you as a filmmaker when you're looking for new ideas? Do you sit down and think about something, or is it something in the world that just strikes you?
It's something that, it's in each film that I did, it was so different. In this film, it's totally seeing the mashups and Kutiman's work and thinking about all those amazing talents that there is a good chance that we are missing, and we will never hear about them. And they are amazing, unique voices, unique people.
Now, does this make you want to go out and look for more of these people yourself?
Yes, totally. During the process of filmmaking and the research, I saw such amazing talents, on YouTube. People that with no many views, but, people with something to say to the world. And this is something that I think this story could not happen 20 years ago. It's something that is very relevant, and I hope it will start a kind of a change.
Mm-hmm. How exciting is it for you as a filmmaker in this day and age? Because as you just said, a film like this would not have been possible 20 years ago. We didn't have, social media had not exploded, and that's opening up whole new worlds for storytelling. Is that something that you embrace, or do you still like the traditional way of telling stories through cinema?
I like the traditional way, but I'm very excited. I think this internet and social media open a window. The fact that two people from different places around the world can create and collaborate and do something new. It's something that for me gives me a lot of optimism. Also in the ability of people that not necessarily have the right connections or the power to break into the world of music or films or art. It can be very cruel, and I think the internet can give a stage and a platform that still people can find each other and do something, and even give a little fight to those cruel rules that usually dominate those worlds of art and music.
So how cruel was the world to you when you tried to get your first film made?
It was, I started in Israel. It was very, very hard, to get, especially when you start and you are very unconfident, and you need to prove yourself, and you need to find someone that will believe you, and like Kutiman, that see Samantha and believe her and listen to her. And I think the film is about that, about all those people that are doing art and music. And this need, and especially in the beginning of their way, that someone will see you, see your talent, will think that you have something interesting to say and believe in you. This is something that I felt it totally when I started, and it was very hard in the beginning.
So what is it about filmmaking? What is the greatest gift that it gives to you?
For me, those films took me places that I would never think I will get. And I'm not only talking about physical places, but also emotional places. And in this film, like in Presenting Princess Show, there is something, the way I work, I'm not doing interviews, there is no narration. I'm being there and trying to document those moments. And what was exciting for me the most is how, the reality can write a script that I could never imagine.
Is that more difficult for you when you are making a film to not be writing anything, to not have narration, and just rely on life unfolding?
Yes, there are moments that I get very depressed because things are not really happen the way I hoped, but it can be very frustrating. But for me, I feel it's the right way, to take this chance. If I have a strong feeling and I know that there is something that I want to film or I want to say, I will go with this intuition. This is something that it's right. It feels right for me.
So now that you get to sit back and look at Presenting Princess Shaw, and it's hitting theaters, and people are going to get to see it, what would you have to say is the most challenging thing about this particular film that you overcame in getting the film made?
I think it's a lot about things that we talk about, the challenging of where first the distance, to do this film that it's like Israel, U.S., and I couldn't be in New Orleans as much as I wanted. And also to combine all the lines of the YouTube and the music and the real shooting that I had. Was really challenging.
Well, so what is next for you now, Ido? What do you have?
First, I'm totally in this experience with the film released here in the U.S. and the film also released in Israel, and it's like in the commercial theater, and I'm really into it. And I started to research new projects, but it's too early for me to talk about them. I can say that they are very much, again, connected to this social media and music.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do next. Ido, thank you so much for joining me today on Behind the Lens.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to talking to you again when you get your next film done.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ido.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was filmmaker Ido Haar talking about Presenting Princess Shaw. And we're going to take a short break and then come right back to Behind the Lens. Located in the heart of Screenland, Culver City Observer is the #1 newspaper in Culver City, covering local news, politics, and community events, with sports by Mitch Chortkoff and movie reviews by Debbie Lynn Elias. Culver City Observer is the place to go to be in the know. When you think Culver City and the heart of Screenland, think Culver City Observer. When you think movies and movie reviews, think Culver City Observer. Culver City Observer, a division of Arizona Newspaper Group, is available in print and online at www.culvercityobserver.com. And welcome back to Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Lynn Elias, film critic, moviesharkdeblore.com. You can find me here every Monday from 11 to 12 or 2 to 3, depending on which coast you're on, and whatever you are in between. My brain can't process that much. So, you've heard today from some very fabulous documentarians, SOREN Peter Sorensen, IDO HAAR, and some clips from Luke Walker in his upcoming film, Australia's Lost Gold. And we have a few more minutes. So, Steve, we're going to do the clip, Luke's third clip, yes? Okay, so let's hear a little bit more of what Luke Walker had to say about Australia's Lost Gold.
It felt like I was a bit of a nerdy Indiana Jones in a way, and that's quite exciting when when you have that sort of curious mindset. And we were unraveling an 80-year-old mystery, and there are things that were being discovered for the first time, and so when you're in the moment of discovering a clue that's 80 years old, and you're the one that's found it, and it's a piece of the puzzle that you've been looking for. It's quite obsessive and it's quite exciting, and it genuinely, that enthusiasm and that intrigue, it's genuine. They are riddles that I've been trying to solve for a long time. So I'm glad that comes across to you when you're watching it.
So anybody in the LA area, you want to meet Luke Walker, you want to see Australia's Lost Gold, Friday and Saturday night, Arena Cinema in Hollywood. Be there, evening show. Luke and I will be doing a Q&A after the film. And right now, for the last couple minutes here, I want to bring up some of my exclusive interview with Mike Epps. As you recall, Mike just starred in Deon Taylor's latest film, Meet the Blacks. But Mike also has the new TV series, Uncle Buck. Yes, based on the John Candy movie that we all know and love from decades gone by. So I had a chance to sit down with Mike for an exclusive interview and talk to him about working with ensembles, being on set, and his role beyond yuck yuck, laugh it up, and carry the comedic ball. And here's what he had to say. When you now are stepping in front of the camera, and it is a real filmmaking experience where it's not just set, block, set, shoot, but you've got a lot of physicality going on here, plus you've got to not only nail your delivery, but comedically react. Mm-hmm. And for narrow hallways, smaller rooms, how does that influence your performance as you approach a scene?
I just adjust. I'm an adjuster. I adjust to whatever the situation is. I scale it down to what I can do.
But you don't adjust your paycheck, though. Please tell me you don't.
No, I don't adjust that. Yeah, I adjust it for more.
Adjust up.
Yeah, I adjust up. But, I just upgrade to whatever's going on, And if it's a downgrade, it's a downgrade, but it's all performance, No matter how I give it, it's all performance.
Do you like these ensemble movies?
I do. I like these ensemble movies because they give you an opportunity to work with a group of people. Mm-hmm. And when you work with a group of people, it's less work, and it's fun. When it's scaled down and you're depending on 2 to 3 people, it's good, but it's nothing like working with 10, 11, 13 people that are good, and you get to see, and the movie's colorful, and you get to see all genres of talent come together. Everybody's different, bringing something different to the table.
And we can all see what Mike brings to the table with Uncle Buck when it premieres sometime this summer in the fall. But for now, that's all the time we have today. I'm Debbie Lynn Elias. We'll be back here in Behind the Lens next week. Until then.